Good morning, wherever you happen to be in the Douglas Shire. Well, I saw that story come up on Newsport, byline Howard Salco, and that 6 of the major global online travel agents, the OTAs, have signed undertakings to stop pressure selling, false discount claims and hidden charges following 14 months of investigation by the UK Competition and Market Authorities. In what has been labelled a landmark decision, action has been taken against Booking.com and Expedia, who control 85% of the global OTA booking revenues market share, as well as 4 other OTA brands, Trivago, Agoda, Hotels.com and eBrokers. In 2017, Booking.com generated US dollars 12.7 billion. And Expedia US $10 billion. Gerry Ireland, Director of Port Douglas Direct, a local tourism advocacy group, which has been advocating against the same sharp practices and ever-increasing OTA market share dominance in Australia, says he hopes the ACCC will follow the CMA's lead. That is the mob in the UK. And Gerry's on the line at the moment. Good morning, Gerry.
Good morning to you, Paul.
Well, Gerry, do you want the ACCC to follow the CMA's lead? What's your thoughts?
Yes, of course. We need more compliance and more of a level playing field for tourism operators, not just in Douglas Shire, but throughout North Queensland and beyond.
So, where do you stand? What does your group represent, and what is your part of the market, so to speak, to let listeners in on that?
Well, we're an advocacy group, a tourism advocacy group, and really given that tourism plays such a vital part in our Douglas Shire economy, it's about 85% of the economy, we're keen to see tourism thrive and prosper. And the reality is, over the last decade or more, tourism has really struggled. And therefore, the overall economy in the Shire has struggled with it because tourism's the key driver. And that's demonstrated by the headline gross regional product figures for Douglas Shire, which you can find on Council's website.
So you're saying we're not doing so good?
Oh, definitely not. If you look at the gross domestic product for Douglas Shire, which is on the Council's website, and you compare gross domestic product for the year ending 2008, it sat at about $900 million. And in 2018, it was just below $700 million. So that's in 10 years, our headline regional product in the Shire. So that's the equivalent of gross domestic product for a nation. Our regional gross domestic product has declined over that period of time. So that number really gives the community either a sense of well-being or things aren't going so well.
Okay.
And the reality is things are not going so well. If you compare, Paul, if you take the year 2001 for this number, and say Douglas Shire is 100 in 2001. In 2018, we were 108.4. So in that 19, 20-year time frame, in real terms, our economy has improved by 8.4%. If you take the same figures for the same time period for regional Queensland, 100 in 2001, regional Queensland sits at, I'm just bringing the figure up from the Council's website, that sits at 164.9. So regional Queensland from 2001 to today, or last year, improved 65% overall. Here in Douglas Shire, we improved 8.4%. Not my numbers, statisticians' numbers, the government statisticians' numbers that feed the information through to council who publish it on their website.
Well, Gerry, what are we doing wrong in your book?
Well, if tourism is the key driver, 85% of the overall economy, guess what must be struggling in terms of the overall performance of our economy? Tourism. And again, if you look on Council's website, you'll see that tourism over the last 10 years really hasn't increased to any great extent. We've fallen behind the performances, again, of regional Queensland. You compare our tourism performance in terms of improvement with Byron Shire or the Sunshine Coast, economies that are equally dependent on tourism, and we just haven't performed that well.
Well, based on those figures, what do you think needs to be done? I mean, we're told that tourism, the news releases that we get say that tourism's on the move. The tourists are coming in greater numbers and all of that sort of stuff. That goes against what you're saying. So
you're talking about, Paul, tourists coming to Australia in great numbers and to Queensland in great numbers. International tourists who visit regional Queensland stay on average 9.1 days. Tourists who come to Douglas Shire stay just over 5 days. That tells you something. Now, these, again, I want to stress, these are not my numbers. There's no way I would be sat here, reading these numbers off, unless they were in the public domain. They are. All I've done is unearth them.
But why do you care, Gerry? Why do you care?
Well, because I came to live here in the knowledge that tourism was the principal driver of the economy and was very important. And I came here from, like a lot of people, I came from Auckland, New Zealand, and chose to come here because of all of the other attributes that set this region apart. The only region in the world where we sit between two wonderful assets in the Daintree rainforest and the Great Barrier Reef. So I'm here for the same reasons as everyone else. But what I've discovered is we don't handle how we manage the economy and the performance of the economy that well. I'll give you an example. I don't think there's anyone in the Shire at a local tourism organisation level or the regional tourism organisation level that would have any forward budgets for tourism. So how can that be? How can the tourism authorities, locally and regionally, only ever account for historical performance? Because if there are no budgets, any performance we have in 2019 is going to be accidental. If there are no budgets, you've really got no plan for any growth. That's the reality.
But Gerry, Tourism Port Douglas Daintree get a budget. They get given, $480,000, nearly $500,000 a year from the council.
Well, you've got to define what you're talking about there. You're talking about funding. I'm talking about how many tourists come here. So I'm talking about what happens to the funding. Where does it get invested? What are the budgets around it? How many international tourists are planned for Douglas Shire in the year 2019, 2020 and 2021 versus how many domestic overnight tourists have we got planned? What's the balance? How are we going to entice and promote tourists to stay here longer? We need more than just individual resort plans. We need the leadership in tourism to take responsibility for strategies that will work short, medium and longer term. And that's where we fall down badly, and that's why the performance is so lacking.
Gerry, there'd be a lot of tourism people in this part of the world would be listening to you and saying, how dare he say there's no leadership up here, that we are the jewel in the crown of Australia's tourism and there is plenty of leadership in this area, in the Douglas Shire. So when you say something...
I'm not blaming the local leadership, Paul.
Who are you blaming?
Okay, that might
who are you blaming?
Enough.
Who are you blaming?
I'm blaming... Yeah, look, this is this is the result of the overall system. Regional tourism organisations and local tourism organisations that really aren't equipped, either through funding or through professional organisations, to take a lead. You know, tourism is a big business. Tourism accounts in Douglas Shire for more than $500 million a year, more than $500 million. That's the equivalent of a very large company. Now, we've got a team of maybe in TPDD, we might have a team of, let's say, 4 people with a budget of less than $500,000 a year. I don't blame them. They're victims. They do the very best they can with the resources they've got. But when I'm talking about leadership, I'm talking about the ability to be in the helicopter, off the ground, being aware of what the trends are and having sufficient funding and organisational nous and experience to be able to manage that in a proactive, assertive way. And all I'm saying is that does not happen in our Shire. No fault of the people involved.
Okay, what sort of funding do you believe is needed to do it the right way in your book?
Well, I'll give you an example of Queenstown in New Zealand. 30,000 population. We have a population here of 12,000. So they are larger, but they spend north of 4.5 million New Zealand dollars, say about 4 million Australian dollars. They spend 4.5 million Kiwi dollars a year promoting Queenstown. Now that gives them promotional clout. It gives them strategic marketing clout. That means they can plan their budgeting on an annual basis and on a 5-year basis. They're held to account for performance in those budgets. So they have a CEO, a board of directors, and they would have 15 full-time people working on tourism, which is, like here, the dominant industry in that region. So there's one example.
Hang on, let me just stop you there, Gerry. Let me stop there. Based on those figures that you just quoted, based on the population that you've just quoted for Queenstown, what you're suggesting is we should be at least getting close to $2 million for promoting this part of the world.
I'd like to see it 3 million, 3 to 3.5 million, because we're 85% dependent. You know, we've got a smaller population more dependent on tourism. Because what other industries do we have here outside of sugar and aquaculture? And, you know, they're very small. How do we diversify our economy here in Douglas Shire? Well, there may be ways to do it, but that's going to take, 10, 15, 20 years with serious long-term planning. We can't afford that. We haven't got that time. I'm saying for 10 years now, we've been on the receiving end of poor performance. And if we want to improve that performance, we need to look seriously at how the organisation managing tourism throughout the region, not just the Shire, throughout the region and throughout Queensland and further afield, Australia, we need to look at, is Tourism Australia, is Tourism Events Queensland, are they doing a thorough job? How can our TAs, the online travel agents, which is where we started this conversation, how can they have been allowed over a less than 10-year period to gain such a dominant part of the market here in Douglas Shire? They control 60% of all the bookings in the Shire, and not one of them is a local or a regional or even an Australian company. They're all overseas based. You put into Google Port Douglas accommodation. Do it now if you want, Paul. Put it in. See what comes up on the first page of Google for any tourist customer putting in Port Douglas accommodation. Everything is booking.com, Airbnb, Agoda, Trivago, blah, blah, blah. How come that's happening?
I'm just doing it now. Okay, accommodation in Port Douglas. The first one that comes up is booking.com, Port Douglas.
Okay, they're the number one with Expedia. They're a $12 billion a year American business, global. And by the way, all the booking commissions don't stay in Port Douglas, don't stay in Douglas Shire. Where do they go? They go to America, where they're headquartered.
Yeah, I know. I've had Dick Smith on the air telling me that. Let me just tell people
Dick got his lead from our advocacy here in Douglas Shire. So
that
we
is
alerted
correct.
Dick to what was going.
That is correct. But let me just tell people, the first one is booking.com, second one is Airbnb, okay? Third one is Mantra Hotels, and then
My third one, by the way, is Trivago. I've got mine up as well.
Okay, well, Trivago doesn't come up third for me. Oh, yes, it does. Sorry, it does. It comes up third. No, it doesn't. It comes up fourth for me. And also TripAdvisor, then Booking.com, then Stays.com.au, Expedia, Trivago, What If, blah, 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 blah. Listen, can I just ask you about the situation with Port Douglas Tourism and the Daintree website, you know, our local one?
Yeah, you're talking about Tourism Port Douglas Daintree.
Yep, Tourism Port Douglas Daintree. Yeah. Now, you have been quoted and criticising them for running a campaign in Melbourne on Melbourne trams where they promoted, and I'm sorry, I contacted Tara Bennett about this to say I don't understand. You're saying that they used on Melbourne trams Booking.com, they promoted Booking.com?
Yeah, that was the end result of that promotion. You had to go to the Booking.com site to find accommodation in Douglasshire.
But why would they do that? I mean, they've got a website where people
Why would you ask me that question?
Well, I'm just asking you, just what your thoughts are.
I have no idea. But we came out very strongly against that and said this is a joke. How on earth can you justify spending cooperative dollars with a huge OTA to promote local tourism? I mean, the local accommodation providers would have been up and on.
Yeah,
Makes no sense.
Because I know Tara Bennett has told me that website, they're not a booking agency. They're not there to make money out of bookings. But what they do have on their site is all the local tourism operators. Now, okay. So hang on a second. Hang on, Gerry. No, hang on. Let me finish for a second, Gerry. You've had a good go, mate. Just let me have a say. They've got all the tourism operators on their website, and that is fair enough. Tara has said to me that they're not a booking site. They've just got the tourism operators up there on their website. You click on those. Say you want to go to Silky Oaks Lodge. You click on Silky Oaks Lodge. You can go and book with them. And this other thing in Melbourne just does not equate to me. It does not make sense.
You and me both. Well, that's why we advocated it. Now, look. Hang on.
Can I just ask you, Gerry? Hang on, Gerry. Have you got a photo of one of those trams? Because I just find it hard to believe.
Yes. Yeah, I'll send you the photo through.
Yes, please. I'd like to see it. I just can't believe. That just does make no sense to me that they would be promoting an OTA. I don't understand that.
Well, they were promoting accommodation in Douglas Shire, but you had to go through the OTA Booking.com website to find it. Yeah. Now, on the bigger issue of TPDD's website, you can't book accommodation. What do you think in today's day and age, tourist customers are looking for in terms of booking their accommodation? They want the ability to move through a site and review the options, compare the options, book the options, and pay for the options. That's the level of convenience that they expect. That's what you get when you go through any of these OTAs. So to spend any money promoting a website in this day and age for tourists to not provide the kind of experience that they expect, my opinion, doesn't make sense. May have done in the last century, not so in this century. So we agree. There's a great opportunity for Tourism Port Douglas Daintree to commercialise their operation, to produce budgets going forward, to enable tourist customers to book and pay on websites after they've done comparisons. Why wouldn't you complete that process?
And then the money stays here.
Absolutely right.
Okay.
And we promote that money, that funding, that $10 to $20 million a year, whatever it is, through accommodation here that gets sucked out of the region and sucked out of Australia. Yeah, we tip it here.
Beautiful. All right, well, thank you for your time, Gerry. We've covered a bit of ground, but I thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, Paul. Thank you.
Gerry Island there. Well, Tara Bennett from Tourism Port Douglas Daintree is on the line at the moment. Tara, I'll ask you about a few other things that Gerry and I discussed there, but first up, those figures that he quoted from the website of the Douglas Shire Council. Your thoughts?
Pulling through statistics, I find you can really come up with whatever scenario you're looking for. From Tourism Australia's Tourism Events Queensland, we know the IVS and MBS, which is the visitor numbers, are very flawed. As far as the regional GDP or GNP goes, I've also looked at those figures, and you'll actually find that some of the tourism-related sectors have seen fairly impressive growth. So I think it's better to move really beyond nitpicking on figures and talk about, we're seeing fantastic investment from operators in the region. That certainly shows confidence from the business sector in the visitor economy here.
But is our tourism industry growing?
Right now, no. Unfortunately, we've had, it's been flat probably for about the past 9 months. Queensland-wide, we have a number of challenges that we're battling, so we'll have to work that little bit harder and collaboratively to try and grow our share of the pie.
Okay, these online websites, the Booking.coms and the Expedias and the like, that are taking a lot of money, billions of dollars out of Australia and a lot of money out of this region. When I was told that you use Booking.com in Melbourne on a tram, I said, no, that could not be possible. But you actually stand by that because these online booking agencies are a bit on the nose at the moment now, but you stand by what you did with that campaign.
Absolutely, Paul. If we cut off that particular channel of sales, our region would be in a world of trouble. So we try and take a balanced viewpoint with our activities at TPD. We do a lot of consumer direct. We also work with partnerships to leverage off their buying power, as well as traditional trade. So it's actually really important that we utilise a whole range of different selling options.
Just in the future, could you consider, and this is a way of keeping the money in our part of the world, of actually having a booking site as, an offshoot to what you already have? You already do a great job here with the website and promoting local tourist operators, and that's great. But have you ever thought about putting up an actual booking site, getting that involved? You would then save the money. The commissions would stay here in our region.
Yeah, look, Paul, we actually look at this probably every 2 years. We did have a booking engine many years ago. Best practice right now for destination management organisations like ourselves is to move away from that. A number of organisations, and we look to, leaders out there such as Noosa who have put in booking engines. I speak to them. It doesn't deliver the revenue that some people think it's going to bring. In fact, in most cases, it costs them more. So we're electing currently, and we'll always review what's the best option out there for our community. But right now, providing direct booking to our operators is definitely the best way forward, as well as not expending too many of our resources on trying to drive bookings rather than driving destination awareness. And
last question, what do you think of OTAs?
I think probably a necessary evil. You really can't dispute their power right now. If I was an operator, and when I have been one, my biggest tip is invest in your own assets, because research tells us that if they find you on an OTA, probably 60% of people then go to your own website before they book. So that's your opportunity to secure them there and then, and I think that's really where we can make some gains is by investing in our own businesses.
Tara Bennett, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.